Good evening, folks. My name is James Huff, the AVFM radio director. I would like to introduce Paul Elam, founder of A Voice for Men, and Roosh V, founder of Return of Kings. We are going to have a discussion tonight, and of course, fair rules apply. Let's keep it civil. Let's share our time, folks. And with that, we'll go ahead and open up with Paul Elam.
Okay, hi everybody. Thank you, James. Good evening, Roosh. Glad to have you here.
Good evening.
There is got about 1 million ways that this conversation could go. I mean, if it goes like online exchanges, I don't think it's going to be very interesting to anybody. We were just talking briefly before we started going live, and one of the things that came up was that with all the acrimony that there has been between the, I guess, Roosh's community, whether you want to call it game, PUA, I'll let Roosh call it whatever he wants. I won't put a label on it. And the MRA community, there needs to be a time for some sort of civil discourse about the similarities that we have and the differences. Roosh came into a Twitter feed and issued a bit of a challenge for us to allow him to come on and speak his mind, and I wanted to accommodate that. So for me, this talk is about, where are we different, where are we the same, where are our points irreconcilable, what is the amount of worth of the acrimony that's there, are we compatible as at least some sort of modified allies, or are we just two communities that don't see eye to eye on enough to ever get along with each other? And I really don't pretend to have the answer to all those questions. So I wanted to start it out by offering Roosh an opportunity to talk about why he asked to come on, what was on his mind, and anything else that comes up in the middle of this, and give him free rein to say what he wants, the way he wants to say it.
Sure, and the first thing I wanted to say is that I've been very hard on men's rights for years now. I remember just a couple years ago, I wrote an article saying that the men's rights movement is dead, and I said some other harsh things as well. And maybe I think one of the reasons is because I kind of viewed you as a competitor in one way, taking men away maybe from the branch that I try to teach, a branch of self-improvement and realizing one's masculinity. And then I would think, no, they shouldn't go down the men's rights road, because that road, they're going to try to celebrate themselves as being a victim. They're going to try to petition the government that is firmly against men. So back then, yeah, maybe I did see you guys as trying to take away men from the more correct road that I wanted to bring them down. But now I see it as a way that, well, men are going to be in different phases of their lives. They're not going to be ready for a road of self-improvement or something that I teach. And maybe they have been severely burned by the court system in terms of divorce, in terms of child custody. So maybe men's rights is for them, and it is for where they are in life and the problems that they have in life. They need to be served by Paul Elam. They need to be served by Karen Strawn or whoever else is providing the programs and the advice that helps them. Maybe they're not ready to do what I'm doing to, learn about going to the gym and hitting on girls and realizing this or that, and self-improvement, traveling, making money online, or something such as this. So that's when I started, I think, to tone down some of the things that I said. In the past year, I can say that I really attacked you guys. And I think things were going well. For most of this year, Paul published an interview of me by Obsidian early in 2015 when I had the problem in Montreal. You guys also, this was in August, you made an article about me, helping me out, and I appreciated that. But then something happened in later this year where it must have been something that I wrote, and Paul got angry at it and kind of came at me. And since then, for the past, I would say 3 or 4 months, we definitely haven't been on the same page.
Fair enough. What do you say, Roosh? Because if in the scenario you just painted, it's interesting because I have more or less a reverse scenario in my head. Because we do have a lot of people in the men's rights community, at least in AVFM, following some of our writers and even some of our staff who got to us through game forums, PUA forums, that sort of thing, that sort of branch of self-improvement that felt that they ended up feeling like it was lacking and like it left them possibly, able to work on themselves, but not really doing much for their fellow man, for their own community, their own society that they live in. And so it was more or less the communities, the type of communities that you have at Return of Kings and at other places, they inevitably viewed that as a stepping stone to actually move up to a level of self-improvement that they valued more than, say, working out or scoring or being a more complete practitioner or skilled practitioner of game. So is it possible that neither one of these communities are actually stepping stones, but they just might have an appeal to people, to something better, as it were, but they might just have an appeal to something that's not being fulfilled where they're at?
And what I think it comes down to is what are the needs that men currently have in their specific lives, and where are they mentally, emotionally, and the way, of course, you're going to say that you believe men's rights provides the solutions, and I'm going to say that neomasculinity, which is what I do, it's not only game, what I teach provides it. But I just come to understand that you can't, every man, there's maybe, say, I'm just throwing a number out, 4 or 5 different types of men, and each type is going to fit in a certain type of peg, square, circle, or so on. So sometimes I look at men and I say, you know what, this guy would be better served by men's rights. Or I look at another man whose personality, whose stage in life is different, he's going to be better served by MGTOW. Of course, I like to think most men would be served by me, but I know not all will. So in terms of game, I do agree that years ago I did push mostly getting laid as the main thing. I was more singularly focused. I was having fun in South America and Europe. And if you were me, you were traveling and you were given a buffet of girls in the prime of your physical life and your hormones are raging. This is something that maybe you would have done too. But that's just something that at that time, my reality was this: excitement, adventure, and fun. And I think a lot of guys, maybe they don't do it for as long as I did. I did for a long time. But for a year or two, they kind of want to have fun too. They want to experience a different kind of girl. They want to feel like the man and so on. So what I just came to the realization is that you're not going to do that forever. You're not going to chase women and date forever. So it is a stage, but I still believe it's an important stage. So, to answer what you said, I'm not sure. I don't think there is one movement or cause that can serve every man out there. So could it be that your movement is one step above mine, or mine is above yours? It could be, but what I see, they're kind of lateral. It's not so much going up or down, but steps off to the side.
Oh yeah, I think that's really exactly what I was saying, that there are men in different places in their lives. I know that for instance, I was 18 years old in Asia and getting laid left and right, and that was an important developmental part of my life. But of course, the priorities that I have, or that I had at 18, are certainly not the same priorities I have as a more mature adult man. And this is what one of the, I think, the points of contention. The other point with this that I think has raised a lot of concern, at least in my community, is that we're not a community of guys that have been unsuccessful with women. A lot of men end up in the men's rights community because they have been very successful with the wrong women. And that rather than learn any discretion about what women they allowed into their circle, they focused their attention on numbers, on quantity versus quality, and many of them ended up paying the price for that. That's how a lot of men end up in family courts. I remember one conversation I had some years ago with a guy, and this is not a reflection of you because I don't think this is anything you taught, but I asked the guy, you know, he was just saying game was the be-all and end-all of everything. And I asked him what he would do if he ended up with the wrong woman and ended up in the wrong courtroom because of it. And he said he would game the judge. I was I was floored by that level of obtuseness. And I think where a lot of the division philosophically comes is that while certainly anybody acknowledges that for a heterosexual male, there is a period of young life, about the time the guys are more invested in rock concerts than electric bills, where scoring, getting laid, finding your, sowing your oats, as it were, is a very big priority, and it's a very big part of development for young men. But these are things also with consequences, and what I've found lacking so much in at least a lot of the PUA game forums that I've been into, and I want to get into the neo-masculinity thing in a moment, is that there is a mentality, even if it's not the mainstay of the literature on there, when I read through the comments, when I read through the priorities of the young men who come there, it's all about scoring. And that's one great thing, but a lot of times these guys that are focused on scoring end up 5 years later, I get an email in my box saying, oh my God, can you please help me? I'm fucked. And that's a very real part of this.
And let me ask you this, though. Before that man gets screwed with a false accusation, divorce, are you able to serve that man when he still is looking to experience women adventure and he wants to gain experience? Do you have the solution or the advice to give to that man before he gets burned?
I have the possibilities. One of the things, the work that I've done with Dr. Tara Palmatier and the book that we wrote together is a book about understanding, recognizing cluster B personality disorders, the women that are most likely to clean you out in a divorce, the women that are most likely to level a false accusation against you, and teaching young men, older men too, because a lot of men don't learn this, they'll go to the grave ignorant of the type of personality that is most likely to be a danger to them. Now, can you shove this down the throat of an 18-year-old guy who gets hard every time the wind blows? No, absolutely not. I'm not naive enough to think that I can present that as a solution because, quite frankly, a lot of young men won't listen to it. But the information is there that you can screen these women out, a lot of them, by focusing on having standards and values that you employ in your life, not just putting notches on your belt.
Okay, so you're giving advice to keep men out of harm's way, which is important. But do you have advice to help these men get the girls that they want? If a 21-year-old man, he wants to get a girlfriend, do you have the knowledge or the tips to help him achieve that?
Yes, we also write about that in a lot of our articles. And again, they're not the same as what you find in the sort of calculated, here's how you act, here's what you do, here's what you say. It's more focused. But
that's what men need. You know, that's what men need. Unless you kind of show them how to do it, like you're teaching a kid how to ride a bike. Because, I mean, I know you guys aren't really known for sharing how to get laid tips or how to be good with girls, how to kiss, how to go on dates. I haven't seen that.
Well, because we're not known for something does not mean the information is not there. I've been writing for years on the idea that one basic fundamental female psychology that I doubt very seriously if you will disagree with, women are attracted to strength and power. They are. It's a known fact. There's no getting away from that. For young men who choose to take the path, there are strength and power in their own values, in their own standards. One of the ways that I've heard it expressed from a pickup artist in the past was the difference that makes the difference is indifference. That being indifferent to women actually attracts them. And I have actually practiced that in my own life at one point, and it worked very well. But the indifference was not based on a play act. It wasn't a scheme. It wasn't something calculated. It wasn't something out of a how-to book. It was me simply exercising my values, that my life, my interests, my wants, my desires, my wallet, and everything else was more important to me than the approval of a woman. And I guess the irony of that is that it attracted more women. So yeah, that advice is there. It's not as glamorous, it's not as sexy, as it were, as lessons on how to kiss or how you dress or how you act in the presence of somebody in order to trigger their instincts for attraction, but it works nonetheless. And so, yeah, we're there with that. We just have a different approach.
Right. I think what you do is pass on more of life wisdom, kind of like maybe a father passing on what he learned in a longer lived life to his son. But when you come down to there's a 21-year-old male in college and his hormones are raging and he wants to meet a girl now, that general wisdom, it's not going to get him there. He needs the specifics, the step by step, and that's where I come in. So now if a guy, he follows my advice and then one day he finds a girl, he gets married with her and then gets screwed after that, then he'll probably look to your advice on what to do then. So I think that's where it comes down where I said earlier, it's not an either or, like either they follow me or they follow you. It's they follow us at the stage. Because I mean, don't take this the wrong way, but I don't know anyone who would go to Paul Elam for how to get lay tips. You know, and if someone does it, that's cool, but I just haven't, heard of that. And they're not supposed to, because that's not what you offer. You're not offering men to go out in clubs and meet girls on the internet. But this is a problem. How to get laid, let's say, is the number one problem that men between the ages of 16 to 30 have. Maybe coinciding with money. But money and sex, those are the two biggest problems that men actually have. Now, the problems that men come to you with are serious ones, but they're not number one and number two. So my net is a little bit larger, and I think your advice is more focused on a man who's been through a specific type of road, and the man who comes to me, it's more of an open type of road.
Well, I've got to disagree with that. Let me tell you why. One, the people that I work with individually, this subject does come up. There is advice asked about that, and I get emails on the subject all the time about interactions with women. And the way you described it, and I'll use the term loosely, but a sort of a Machiavellian set of techniques designed to go after specific women at specific times. And you mentioned that what I had to offer was more of a fatherly wisdom type thing, and that's absolutely correct, because the fatherly wisdom informs me that succumbing to your hormones at 21 is where young men get in trouble, rather than going with the problem. And how do I take this instinctive drive to, I've got to get this woman. My penis tells me that this is the one I want to bed and I want to go after. No regard to her character, no regard to whether or not she's potentially dangerous, no regard to her personality, no regard to anything about her as a human being, but just following the dictates of my dick. Well, pardon the alliteration. then you end up with young men that end up in trouble, because I get guys in trouble that aren't in 50, that aren't 60, and they're not even 40 or 30. They're in their early 20s. They're already booted out of college. They've already been having leveled accusations against them, and it's because they showed no discrimination whatsoever about who they were pursuing. And so, yes, that is part of the wisdom, but that doesn't rule out scoring. What it does is say, look, I'm going to have a conversation with my penis, and my penis is not going to decide how or who I get laid. I'm going to get laid. I'm going to get laid a different way. I'm going to get laid with indifference. I'm going to get laid because the indifference is real, and I'm going to get laid because I hold by a set of values, which means I don't just invite any skank into my bed because she has 36 double Ds. That is the problem, and I think that's the basic divide between your approach and mine, is that I see inherent dangers in what you teach, and to me, that is a disservice to young men.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think men should learn the hard way through experience or not?
I think that the people should learn with as little pain as possible. I recognize that some amount of pain is inevitable in learning. We learn through mistakes. We're flawed human beings. But do I think that a guy needs to lose his college career or end up in jail or end up losing his home or losing his children or his income or live out of his car for 18 years while he's trying to support children that might not even be his in order to learn a lesson? No, I don't think that's...
But then I would say for men who are not married, for just college guys trying to have fun, is false rape and false sexual harassment actually happening? Yes, but what percentage of men will be hit by that? There's no way we can argue more than 5. Like, so 5% or less. So 95% of men, there's millions of guys in colleges in the US and Canada right now. They are going to go out to parties, get drunk, hook up with girls in cases where a feminist say consent wasn't there, and nothing bad will actually happen. So I think you may be trying to paint that if you pursue your horny instinct, your masculine, your hormones are going, if you pursue that, there is danger, and you're giving them the red light. But what man who is just needs sex? Men need it, especially when they are young, when they're 20, 21, or even up to 30. They need it, even though we know that they don't. But they will feel it, and you can tell them you have to avoid the woman with the double Ds, you have to avoid the woman who looks like she's bad. But they don't care, because the male instinct, the masculine instinct is just that deep and strong. So you're giving advice, you're kind of telling men to avoid this and be careful, when the problem, for most men, they're going to roll the dice anyway. So how can they achieve the goals that they want in a way that minimizes the harm that they will actually be faced with? Because yes, I've also written a lot about just you have to watch out for false rape accusations. I wrote one article that said men in college should now consider using a secret camera. So I do get it. I think the problems that you talk about is real, and it is definitely happening, but not on a scale that men should deny their masculine urges, their sexual urges, to listen to a man who's done it all, screwed it all, to now say in the later ages that, hey, you shouldn't do that.
Well, sure, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that men should deny their masculine urges at all. What I'm saying is that integrating your brain into that process is not lethal when it comes to selecting who you're going to be with. But let me put it this way. Let's go back to your 5% figure. One, I'll differ with that. I think the Canaan studies and several others point to a much higher level of accusations that are false than that. But let's just, for the sake of argument, accept.
No. I just mean that 5% of men will ever be falsely accused. That's what I meant.
Out of say 100 million men in America, how many men is that?
Okay.
That's 5 million men.
Right.
And those are the people that I advocate for. And
and
so
that
it's not a trivial number.
No, it's not. And I think the work you're doing to help those men is important. But that's still, how about the other 95 who are never going to be faced with that? How are you going to serve them? How are you going to provide the solutions that they need, which is still money and sex or whatever else that they want, and they just can't see it, that they're going to be the one that is caught, or in the sense that they'll be falsely accused of rape. I mean, no man gets married thinking his wife is going to, turn into an evil Satan afterwards, after she wants to break up with him, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So I think men come to you when the problem already is there, right? So when already men are getting seriously screwed, their lives are turning upside down, they come to you. But for men whose lives are not being turned upside down, I'm not going to send them to you. I'm not going to say, okay, go practice men's rights. Even though everything is fine, I'm just going to help him minimize the risk of having to go to you. Does that make sense?
Well, it technically it makes sense, but I think in practicality, to me, it doesn't. Here's the problem for me, Roosh, is that, one, we don't have a crystal ball on which 5 million out of 100 million men are going to be the ones who suffer the false allegations. We don't have we have a little bit more of a crystal ball on how many men who get married are going to end up getting burned in a divorce, which is nearly half of them. These things are not predictable in any way. So what we do in the same way, though, people who smoke cigarettes don't always get lung cancer. That doesn't mean that we don't talk about cigarettes until after a person gets lung cancer. The important thing here to me, and again, it's not to take away from anything that you do to instruct young men about how to score with women, and I know you're not near as focused on that now as you used to be, but it is about having a consciousness going into whatever technique you use, or whether you just use your own personality. Some guys naturally just do a lot better than others. But what I hear you saying is, let's don't talk about smoking until somebody's already, got emphysema. That's not, to me, an appropriate approach. The appropriate approach is to let people know that smoking causes emphysema. My approach is to let men know of all ages, and of course it's up to them whether they take it, and you're absolutely right, a guy that's 21-year-old's not going to listen to an old fart like me 9 times out of 10, no matter what I say, because we have a generation of men, young men that have been betrayed by older men. They're not going to listen to them for the most part, but the fact is some will listen, and the message is, yeah, get laid, enjoy your dick, enjoy your sexuality, enjoy women. But here are some real warning signs. If the woman that you just met, that you want to fuck so badly, starts the first 10 minutes of conversation about what bastards their ex-husbands were, and how they were molested as a child 17 times, and how their boss tried to fuck them, and every bit of inappropriate self-disclosure, you have a great big glaring sign of danger in that individual right there. And what I don't see in the pickup community or the game community is any real concerted effort to say, hey, wait a minute, those are red flags. You can score with this woman, because women like that are easy to score with. It doesn't take an artist to get laid out of a woman like that. No. But you end up with men in trouble over this, and some of it can be avoided if guys have something go off in their head and say, you know something, I heard Roosh or Elam or somebody else say, if I start hearing this shit, go the other way and find somebody else to stick my dick in.
Now I have written a lot about some warning signs that a girl puts out, some red flags that if a girl is unstable, we recently last week posted an article on ROK, don't date a girl who takes these 10 prescription drugs. So we do that too. But at the same time, it seems like you're coming from the standpoint of don't do this, scolding, don't do that. When I'm saying you can, but know what the side effects are. Take this drug, but be careful. it almost seems like if now maybe I am trying to merge you into the MGTOW, which kind of really, if you run game, you are a beggar. You are gynocentric. They really don't want anyone to do what they're not doing, which is nothing to me. So, I mean, basically, okay, how about this? How about we found a way, Paul, where we can achieve the sex life that we want? Yeah, we have to approach a bit. Yeah, we'll get flaked on this date or not, but we are having sex with girls that we like. We're having fun. But you won't tell me probably, oh, that is great, Roosh, I'm really happy. You'll be like, well, these guys are going to get burned and you shouldn't do that. So I feel like even if we found a way to minimize all the risk and to maximize what men want to do, you would still complain about it.
Well, I wouldn't even call it a complaint. What I would just say is that the blind pursuit of anything is exactly what that is. It's a blind pursuit. And it sounds like what you're saying to me is that the biological determinism of men just want to have sex is reducing all men to their dicks and all men to as though the only thing that's important in their lives is getting laid. And you know, with some guys, and I know at 21 for me, that was probably 75% true, but it wasn't completely true. And I think that the singular focus on just getting laid without, I mean, it's one thing to say like 10 prescription drugs. And by the way, of prescription drugs, there are some of those that have great therapeutic use for things like depression and stuff like that. I've never suggested to anybody that, I mean, but one, the stuff that I worry about with men is more borderline personality, stuff like that. There aren't any psychotropic medications for those disorders. So I would have to look at your list, but I would guess that there are some of them that have great therapeutic use that do not make a woman particularly more dangerous than another, and I would question the science behind that. But sure. I still think the difference that we have on this whole thing is a perception both of men and women, and that's where I would like to use the opportunity, if you're ready, sir, to talk about neomasculinity a little bit.
Sure. But can I just add one more thing? The one thing I wanted to ask or to mention is, what is the nature of man? Why is he here? And we don't know this exactly. I don't think anyone can really say it. But what I can say is that you come from a never-ending line of men who successfully had sex and reproduced. And me too. That means that you come from generation going all the way back to the first man of men who had sex, wanted it, and got it. So therefore, for a healthy man whose testosterone is at a level that is normal, I would say at least 5 years of his life, at least, maybe from 17 to 25 or something, he is obsessed. He is obsessed with sex. He, at his physical prime, he thinks about it once every minute. And I think what you're saying is men shouldn't be reduced to their dicks. I also don't want to be reduced to it too. But we can't deny the reality. And the reality is a big part of why human men are actually here is because of sex, is their urge to reproduce. And when you say, I don't want men to be seen as that, I want them to be seen as intelligent and compassionate and able to build things. Yeah, I do too. But that doesn't change the fact that where we come from and who we are. So if we have a misinterpretation of what male nature is, especially when a man is young, definitely younger than you and even younger than me, then we may lead them, hopefully not, but we may lead them down the wrong road. So the reason why I think game is still important and sex is still important is because I just got out of that. I was really knee deep in it, and I see, man, I couldn't think about anything else. And yeah, maybe for me, my hormone level is a little bit higher than average, but I see men now, and over the summer I did my talk, some men are still into it. They don't want to hear about the divorce, false rape act. They don't care about that stuff. They're like, where's the girls and how do I get them? So I think we have to accept or come to terms. What is male nature? And is my philosophy, does it match that?
Well, I think that's a real simplified approach, Roosh. I'll tell you why. If you go into a room full of winos, you're going to hear, where's the wine and how do I get it? I mean, and that's not equating normal male sexuality with alcoholism, but what I'm saying is that, yes, men from 17, maybe even younger, 15, 14, all the way up into their mid-20s are sexually obsessed. Sex dominates their thoughts. That's what they think about. This is also what gets them into trouble. And that's not to say that they should quell those urges. I've never said that we want to take a 23-year-old guy and say, wait a minute, don't talk about his sexuality. Talk about him as an artist or a creator or a builder or a counselor. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying at all is that young men benefit from having some knowledge about the consequences of their actions, and that involves anything. That sure, you can get a room full of guys, 17 to 25, and you're absolutely right. You're going to get a room full of guys that are going to say, screw all this other stuff, just tell me how to get laid because that's all I'm interested in. But just because that is the primary biological drive doesn't mean that feeding into that blindly is a healthy thing for those young men. It just doesn't.
Yeah, but then I would want to say, what is my nature as a man? And should I live according to that nature or not? This is basic Stoic thought. And they kind of, if you read the books by like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, they say the best life is to live according to your nature. So what you're telling men is your nature, you shouldn't. Your instinct right now is wrong. It's going to hurt you. You must avoid that. You must, instead of thinking about sex and wanting it with the beautiful girl, think of sports or I don't know, or something else. And I don't know. I think that a man should live according to his nature while minimizing harm. Can you eradicate all risk? Can you eradicate all harm that happens to a person's life, whether it's legally, physically? No way. But one thing I can tell you is that you can tell men constantly, this is what I learned in life, this is what you should do, and they will ignore you. Most men, most human beings don't want to be told how to live and what to do. They know what they want, they think it's right, and they want you to tell them how to do it. So when you're trying to stop men from, say, meeting girls, going out, I don't think that is going to work. I think you are already catering to men whose nature says they don't want that. They don't want to go out. They're not as they don't, so if we go to a men's rights meetup and we meet the men there and go to a meetup that I do, I think you're definitely going to see a difference in how the men act and how they are and how they look. There's nothing wrong with that. But to apply a universal thing that all men should benefit from what I say, I think that also denies an individual difference in the nature that men have.
I got to really disagree with you there. One, quite honestly, Roosh, to say that I've implied that men shouldn't pursue their biological urges, just not true. Didn't say anything of the sort, never implied it, never thought it in my life. I mean, it would be silly to take an approach to tell men to ignore their biological urges. But what I hear you saying is that you're in business not to tell men anything they might need to know that would benefit them. You're in business to tell guys what they want to hear. And that's...
Well, or I'm in business to teach men what I know based on going down the same road and having the same instincts and needs. I mean, I am teaching men what I do, what I like to do, or have recently. So I'm not... it's not that all men want to learn how to cook, and I've never cooked, but I'm going to teach them that. I'm only teaching them what I've lived. for years and years.
Okay, but the stipulation was there that you talked about what your audience wanted to hear. And I can go through a dozen or more examples that we have in open display right now, from feminism to left-wing pinheads that are just saturated with audiences and speakers telling people what they want to hear and nothing else. I don't think that's challenging. I don't think that is thought-provoking. I think that that is certainly anticipating. And here's where I will equate it again. If I'm talking to a room full of alcoholics who have no interest in getting sober, I'm going to be a smash hit with a lecture on bathtub gin. And this, what you're saying, and I'm not going to get into the ad hom that goes back and forth between these two camps sometimes by saying you're a feminist, you're obviously not. But the mentality behind this is the same thing I see with feminism. It is, don't ever explore anything that challenges the paradigm, challenges the worldview, or improves things. I mean, feminists have gotten so bad that if you even talk to them about self-protection, they call it blaming the victim. And what you're saying is, when you've got a room full of guys 17 to 25, don't talk about anything else other than getting pussy. Don't talk about the consequences. Don't talk about what possibly might happen to them.
No, I do talk about that, though.
False paternity. But how much do you go into it with them, Roosh? Is it about getting laid, or is it about self-protection, or is it a balance between the two?
I think for a modern Western man's psychological well-being, he must experience sexual activity. I think, and he must do it, it doesn't have to sleep with a lot of girls, but at least get one girl to experience this really basic form of human bonding, right? So I'm not telling a man to enter situations that are dangerous, that are going to hurt him. But at the same time, you have to give him the tools on how to do it and say that it's not wrong for you to do it. And while you are doing it, these are some things that are probably going to happen and some truths that you're going to realize. What I see is a difference between me and you is that you're coming from the road, like you want to tell man what the wisdom is and how to stay completely safe, how to avoid all of the risk. But me, I kind of want men to learn it on their own. I give them tools to live life in a way that they want according to their nature, so the truths, they will see it. And when someone learns on their own what a danger is, I think that's a lesson that's going to stay with them. Because like I said earlier, most men, they don't want to be told what.
If they end up with their life destroyed, you consider that a good lesson?
You know, I don't think that sleeping with the wrong girl is always going to lead to a man being in jail.
No,
you know, maybe it leads to a sexually
transmitted. You wanted men to learn on their own, and I'm asking you, if learning on your own means that you lose everything, you consider that a good way to learn?
Is there ever going to be a way where we completely safeguard 100% of men from getting hurt in life? You know, so it's kind of like a feminist who says no women at all should be raped, and that's a noble thing, but we know there's bad men out there that will do it. So it's how to minimize the risk as much as you possibly can. I'm on the minimization of risk.
That's my spiel. I'm not talking about life is rough and it's better to just learn on your own and let's stick with your biological impulses and get them fulfilled. I'm talking about let's try to get those urges fulfilled without putting your neck on a chopping block. So what you're saying on this...
But there's no way you can say for certainty, if you enter that relationship with this girl, your life will be ruined in the end. There's no way you can say that. You can say...
No, that's not... But again, you're mischaracterizing what I'm saying. What we know in every relationship is that there are risks to be taken, that there's no such thing as moving ahead without risk. We also know for people who are astute, who are observers of human behavior, that high-risk individuals broadcast who they are in advance. You can see it if you learn to read it very, very easily. But what I hear you saying over and over again here is, oh, well, they'll learn. It's better to learn lessons on your own. And that just strikes me, and I'm not trying to level this as an accusation, but this strikes me as pretty damned insensitive, Roosh, to the idea that young men can benefit from learning how not to step in potholes from guys who have been there.
You know, I still insist that I tell guys what the potholes are. But I say, in spite of that, I really don't think you can tell anyone what to do. I really don't think so. Unless you are a king and you have a law, most men, if they want something, they're going to get it anyway. You know, so at least you can tell them, you're going to drive this car in a dangerous way, you're going to speed. At least put your seatbelt on. You know, and I know you're going to say no, but I feel like you're telling them not to drive at all. But I know you're not, but it just feels that way. It feels like you're trying to.
Way, but as I have said, and this, I don't mean this as an insult, as I've said to many women in my life, simply because you feel something doesn't make it true.
Right. But I believe men, yes, they should take a risk that could have an outcome which hurts them. As I'm a 36-year-old man, I've taken a lot of risks, big ones. Some of them have definitely hurt me. Some of them have helped me and have allowed me to do what I do now. It goes both ways, and I think a life well lived is one that includes taking calculated risks that don't constrain what you want. And you know, I do see your point of view. So there is that level of understanding. I get it. I know what you're trying to say, but I still think men have to learn the hard way a lot of things. I hope men don't have their lives, the men who read me and follow my game advice don't get falsely accused of rape. And thank God I haven't gotten any emails from men who say this. But at the same time, sex is a risky thing. You know, it's you can get hurt physically, emotionally. The crazy woman can label you as a rapist, but that sexual urge is strong, and so I'm going to tell guys how to get it.
Fair enough. Now, we're going to be short of time here. We've only got about 13 minutes left. I know you've only got an hour available for us. I wish it was more. But before we go, I do want to talk about neomasculinity a little bit. It's something you've been relatively recently writing about. Or I don't know, how long have you been writing about this concept?
This has been, I introduced it about 1 year ago.
Okay, so it's fairly recent development. I just read for the first time one of your articles, a definition of neomasculinity. Mm-hmm. And if you don't mind, I have a couple of questions about that. What struck me about this, Roosh, was, one, there's things in there that absolutely make sense to me. And again, I think that while you and I obviously have some very, very divergent ideas about, you know, men, about sexuality, about wisdom, and even about biology, there are some things in there that make real sense to me, though. However, where I think I got the most distance from you in your philosophically speaking was in reading your definition of neomasculinity. One, and I'm just going to point this out, it's not even a point worth debating, I was appreciative of the fact that you mentioned the necessity for equal treatment under the law for people. Now, when I say that, there will be people from your community and others that say that I'm advocating politics, which is not something that's I've ever done. I've never lobbied a politician. I've never endorsed a politician, never called people to vote for a measure, anything of that sort at all. Everything that we do at AVFM is more or less what you do. It's about changing consciousness, changing the way people think, or at least offering them opportunities to think outside the box about a lot of things. But what I got from that article, the point that I really wanted to get at, is that it seemed to me, from your perspective on, say, escalating consequences for non-compliant women,
Okay.
that you're talking about men forming relationships with children, not with grown adults.
I'm telling men, I think women should be guided and led by a man who cares for their interests. I think that giving women complete free choice to do whatever that they want has led to the situation that we have now, where women are going against their biological interests. They're becoming focused more on their iPhones and their jobs than being a good mother. So what I'm trying to say is that women, if you give them unlimited consumer choice, unlimited personal freedom, they will make decisions which hurt themselves and the men who want to associate with them. So I believe starting with their father and up to their husband, they should be guided and led, of course, in a caring, a loving way. But I
Isn't that
see
kind
the
of
downside.
infantilizing?
That's the word you want to use, but I'm just
Yeah, it is.
okay. Well, I don't think so. It's just understanding who women are and their weaknesses in leading their own lives. But when a woman is at home and taking care of her kids, you're not going to be over her and telling her how to feed the baby, how to love the baby, and change the diaper of the baby. It's basically constraining the worst parts of a woman that once unconstrained causes a lot of damage and just is like a woman on a warpath, just burning everything along her way. And then by the time she's 30 years old or older, realizes that there's no man who's going to love her and to marry her, she's going to join a movement or an organization that hates you, that goes on the internet and says men's rights this and men's rights that. So the
So
type of woman that is
your solution to women becoming feminist is to have men take charge of their lives?
for women to submit to the leadership of men. Yes, in some ways. I'm not saying women should be slaves and kids, but I'm saying, I mean, if you've ever seen a marriage with a husband and wife that where the man leads the household, and for big decisions on what goes on, the wife asks what the husband is doing. I mean, I think that is a fair thing. I don't think a woman with her card should just go out and spend thousands of dollars or make major decisions that concern the household.
Now, I've got to say this, Roosh. This sounds oddly similar to Sharia law.
A lot of people say that, but really it is more of a Victorian thing where it's that we've seen in Europe. Thing is, okay, what I believe, and I have a father who is Muslim. He doesn't go to mosque, but my stepmom does too. They've been married a long time. They kind of do what I just talked about. That's the model. But my stepmom has freedom to do whatever she wants to cook or shopping and things such as that. It's not that she's a slave, but she loves my dad and her own kids, that she is ready to do what is best in their interest and not have this selfish zombie thing where she's on her iPhone all day, on Facebook and so on. So there has to be some leadership, and my dad is giving the leadership, which allows a happy household. So in terms of Islam, I think having a patriarchal household is the right idea.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. I mean, and again, this is one of these ones that I just have to ask. If what you're advocating here is Victorian principles, how on earth does that fit in with being a player sexually?
What we have to understand is that men go through stages, and during these stages, he's going to want to experience a certain thing. Now, there used to be times when a man for 1 year wanted to, before he got married, he would have his fun. There would be a type of woman in the town that's available for the man. Maybe he sleeps with 2 or 3 girls and gets it out of his system, as they called it back then, sowing his royal oats. And then he would settle down and be a committed husband for as long as he as long as he can. But the point I'm trying to say is that we can't, it's not one box that men are in for their entirety of their own lives, that they go through stages and the seasons of man. So what I'm trying to see is what type of man do we have to cater to each season in a way that doesn't hurt him, that minimizes the great harm, but also allows him to enter a stable household, to marry a woman who understands what it's like to be a good mother and wife. Now, this type of job, I'll be honest, it's not easy. It's not easy to devise from the ground up how you're going to work this, how you're going to account for male sexual nature, and at the same time allow him to find a woman that stays with him and doesn't burn him in divorce. So is this easy? No, but I'm trying one step at a time.
It sounds like what you're advocating there is that from 17 to 25 that men live a life of complete hedonism and then suddenly switch over to a Victorian model where they are just as trapped in a role and in the demands of that role as the woman is. This all sounds like control to me. Where does personal freedom and personal choice play into your model of human sexual relations?
At the same time, we have to understand that there were rules that were given either by the church or by the king that maintain families that were much more stable and healthy than we have now. So does the individual human no more than general human nature that is as old as the hands of time, that go back thousands of years? The wisdom that you can read in the Bible now still applies to human beings. The genes of humans haven't actually changed. So what I can say is, yeah, when I was 21 to 30, I slept around the world. But was that the right thing? I don't know. Did that hurt my ability?
Who would they marry?
But then that's not the nature of every man to do what I did. For some men, maybe only 6 months they will do it. For mine, it was 10 whole years. But I lived according to what my nature said. Now, what does that mean? Is that going to hurt me? Is that going to now impair my ability to meet a woman? So these are things that I'm trying to understand. But one thing I know is that, we can't all think that giving everyone the ability to do what I did would also lead to a stable type of family and society. So what was the right thing? Maybe if I was given a guidance that was different, I would understand things. But what I'm just trying to say is that wisdom can be understood through either experience or understanding the cultural rules that are given. But you have to understand, in the U.S. right now, the rules are unlimited personal freedom, do whatever you want. So maybe in that case, I can agree
you
with...
have to admit, has been the mainstay of your prescription for male sexuality for a number of years.
Yeah, because I was sure that this is something that I was going to do for the rest of my entire life. But then I didn't, so I was like, wait, men have seasons. So there's different phases.
Are you renouncing the days of bang?
No, because when I was doing it at that time, it was the right thing. That's why I would never take away anything I did, because whatever I wrote in the year 2009, for that year, it was truth. It was the absolute truth. But for 2016, as a 36-year-old man, no. So what does that say? What you want right now is probably not going to be what you want 5 years from now. And men need to understand that. And I'm going to tell them, I'm going to help them. This is the phases you will go through.
Do you expect to get married someday?
It isn't up to me completely. I mean, if I meet the right girl and I'm in the right country where the laws are not going to be firmly against me, I think it would need a little bit of luck. But I am at the stage where I don't look forward to going out and meeting a random girl. I'd rather have one girl that I really connect with than, say, sleeping with a new one every other week.
Let me get in one last question. I know
Sure.
we're really just about out of time here, but I would like to ask you one other thing, Roosh. What do you say, for instance, to guys like me who say, you know what, fuck this. I'm going to live like I want to live. I'm not interested in a woman that has to be told what to do or supervise. I'm not interested in controlling anybody. I'm a lot more interested, and I am somebody that's in a 14-year relationship where we treat each other pretty much as equals, and it's working out just fine for me. What do you say to guys to say, man, you want me to what? You want me to find a woman and give her escalating system of punishment until she complies with my will?
No, I didn't say that, but
well, that's exactly what your article bordered on.
oh, that's your interpretation. But what I would say to him is live according to what you want. But the thing is, what men who do that, they come back at me, attack me. They say, oh, you're doing it wrong. They're not content with living that life. They want to attack me instead. So I usually, because I don't attack men who, I don't single out a men's rights activist, like you're wrong and I disagree with you. They're always coming after me, and people in the MGTOW too. I don't attack people anymore. I'm kind of calm, I think. I've gotten older. But people are just constantly coming after me. So, and I mean, you got angry at me too. And, so I think it's more people coming.
That goes back a ways, Roosh. The first time I ever even had anything to say about you was after I watched one of your videos where you said you'd give everybody in the men's rights movement an F for not doing anything. And that was the only thing I'd ever seen from you at that. I mean, I'd obviously heard about you, but in terms of shots across the bow, I responded to the first one.
Okay. But one thing I'll say this, Paul, is that now that we've come to the end, if there's something that I write that you don't like, I urge you to send me an email. Maybe we can work it out. Because getting into a public fight with you, it doesn't make me happy. It doesn't make me feel good. I'm not trying to score points against you guys now. Maybe I'll admit, maybe in the past I did. But this is I see the purpose that you guys serve. I think you are helping men. I do think you have a general interest in helping men who have been screwed, and I admire that. At the same time, I don't agree with all the ideas that you guys have, and I don't think you have all of the answers.
Well, you're not the first person to tell me that.
Okay, but at the same time, I mean, I have zero interest. I mean, with the enemy as strong as it is, and the enemy that we have is almost the same, I rather we don't have to hold each other's hands, but we can at least not fight against each other.
I tell you what, that is going to. I think this is one of these things. I hope that you and I get a chance to let this talk settle for a few months, and maybe come back and do it on your channel again.
Okay.
As a retrospective, I don't know how things are going to go, Roosh. I know that I advocate for men, and I don't care. I'm just being frank with you. When I see things that I believe hurt men, I'm an opinionator. I say something. It's not really personal, but I am certainly open to keeping this discussion alive, and I think it's been a good one tonight.
Okay, good. So, and also one more thing, if a mob comes after you in the next month or two, they try to shut you down, feel free again to get in touch with me, and I'll be more than happy to help you guys out.
I appreciate that. Same here. One thing I
great.
do believe is that neither one of us should be silenced.
Right.
And if there's common ground that you and I can find, it's got to be on keeping the censors in check.
Yep. Okay.
Good
So
enough.
on that note, I hope you guys have a good night. Thank you very much for having me on here. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Roosh from Return of Kings and the author of Bang, and now the author of Neomasculinity. Thank you very much for coming on tonight.
I think that was a productive conversation in some ways.
Oh, you never know. It was at least it was honest.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think it was important. I know that I've gotten messages from people already that, destroy him. I've gotten other messages, go fuck yourself, Elam. I mean, I've gotten the whole gambit of different messages about what should be done with this. The purpose of this, Roosh said at the beginning, he wanted this to be a civil discussion. To that extent, I think we succeeded. We obviously don't agree on a lot. I think Roosh misses a lot. I think Roosh also is a lot more about controlling people, controlling women, controlling other men than he has perhaps let on. And it may be that he's not aware of how intent he is on that. But it is fodder for future discussion. I enjoyed the talk, and I think it was productive, at least to the extent that it did not devolve into just another internet pissing match between two opposing camps.
I can agree with that. I would also propose that you and I sit down this time next week and maybe do a little after action, because there were a number of points that I would like to go ahead and speak about myself.
Hey, let's do this. I got a great idea. You bring your points. Anybody out there listening, put questions in the comments or email me at paul@avoiceformen.com, and we will put your questions and comments on the next program. So consider that a done deal. There will be no guest on next Thursday's program. It will be James and I, who basically had to sit in silence for this whole thing. And now he's going to get his turn, because I know he's got a lot of good things to say about this. Why don't we give people out there on both sides of the fence, trolls, by the way, your really stupid questions. I think I got one. I got one from, oh God, who was that fucking idiot? I don't want to, there's so many.
One of them. Well, yeah.
Somebody on Twitter just tweeted me yesterday. Oh, it was, what's his name? Christopher Cantwell, that ignorant asshat, tweeted me to go suck Dean Esme's dick. And so I'll say to you, Mr. Cantwell,
I don't see how that has any bearing on anything that we do.
Well, I've never seen
care.
Christopher Cantwell never said anything that had much of a bearing on anything. It was in response in part to this conversation. I just wanted to let Mr. Cantwell know.
And this is the difference between constructive conversation and postmodern discourse, and we all know where postmodern discourse lies.
Well, and Dean's and it also has to do with reality, because Dean is indeed a very manly man, but he's in Detroit and I'm in Houston. I don't think it'll stretch past St. Louis. And I ain't going there for it. So sorry, Christopher, you're not going to get your wish. You're going to have to go find somebody else in order to voyeuristically enjoy male on male fellatio. But I wish you all the luck with that. And with shooting,
might speak more about him than it does about you.
Yeah. I ain't touching that with 10 feet of Dean's dick. But yeah, folks, send in your questions. You got any comments? We'll be soliciting for them on the site. Again, too, any of Roosh's audience that want to make points that you don't think Roosh covered in response to any of the points I made, if they are intelligible and worded without being obviously troll questions, I promise you we will read them on the air, and I will allow James and myself both to give you the most honest answers we possibly can. With that, I want to thank Roosh again for coming on. I enjoyed the conversation, would like to do it again sometime. And we're going to go ahead and part, except there's one thing. James has to leave some instructions for every listener out there, no matter what side of the fence on which you sit.
Absolutely, folks. Remember, take the red pill.